Ladies and gents, good afternoon and welcome to the Rotary Club of Darwin's Meet the Candidates Forum. It is, of course, your opportunity to hear more from the people who've put their hand up to represent the Territory for the federal seat of Solomon. Now, last year alone, we know the Rotary Foundation provided more than $86 million in grants for education and literacy projects for disease prevention and treatment, in grants for growing local economies and grants for water and sanitation projects. Now, the money raised here today at this wonderful event will, of course, go to an organisation that makes a real difference to humanity around the world. So I think give the Rotary Club a big round of applause for putting on this great event today. We would also like to acknowledge the marketing and sales support, of course, of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Katie Woolf. I'm from Mix 104.9 and I'll be your MC for today. And of course, today is all about meeting the candidates in an unbiased forum that will be informative for the voters and fair to each candidate. Now, just to lay down the ground rules so everybody has a clear understanding of how today is going to run, each candidate will have 4 minutes to make an opening statement. And, myself as the moderator may ask questions arising from those statements and also from responses. But there is going to be 2 minutes for a response to each of the audience questions that we've got today, because the main aim really of today is to have you, the members of the audience, asking the questions and really putting those questions to our candidates so you can find out a little bit more about what these people stand for and why you should or should not vote for them. And it is really about, like I said, giving you the chance to ask those questions. We will have our wonderful Rotary Club volunteers. You can see them around the place in their bright shirts. And if you do have a question throughout the day, just pop your hand up. And of course, we'll get a microphone out to you and you'll be able to ask that question. If you would prefer to not ask the question, you can have it asked by myself on your behalf. So if you head over to Alistair, he'll be able to let you know what questions, or he'll pass those on to me. Now, we do also, of course, have the option to review those questions as well before we put them through to me if you don't want to ask them yourself. Now, as I said, this is all about you, and it's all about us finding out more about these candidates and exactly what they stand for as they put their hands up for the seat of Solomon. Let's get started. We may as well get right into it because we've got 4 of our candidates here today, and they're each going to give you a little bit of detail about themselves, followed by the reason why the electorate of Solomon should choose them to represent us in Canberra. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you the current sitting member for Solomon, Mr. Luke Gosling. Now, Luke started his working life in defence, spending 13 years in the Army, including leadership roles in parachute infantry, commandos, defence cooperation programs and the Territory's own Nor Force, as well as overseas service in PNG, Malaysia and Timor-Leste. Luke's time in the Army taught him duty and service, teamwork and leadership. And after leaving the Army, Luke worked overseas in countries like Afghanistan, Cambodia, Albania and Timor-Leste. He also co-founded a not-for-profit NGO, Life, Love and Health, an Australian volunteer charity for Timor-Leste, and it has fundraised and built schools and brought in running water to remote villages. Now, for this work, we know that Luke was awarded the Order of Australia Medal in 2006 for his relief work during the 2006 humanitarian crisis. We know that Luke strongly believes in contributing to the community, and here in Darwin, he works as a Vinnie's volunteer after serving as the Darwin CEO. Luke's family have got a mortgage, and he says that he fully understands the pressures on the cost of living and wants to help Darwin and Palmerston to keep their great lifestyle, and that means growing jobs, protecting conditions, and making sure people don't get left behind. Please join me in welcoming Luke Gosling. And we will now give Luke the opportunity for him to tell us a little bit more about himself.
Thanks very much, Katie, and welcome everyone to the CAV. Thank you to the CAV, thank you to the Chamber, and it's a great idea to be fundraising for Rotary. So I'm glad to be here taking part in this. It's really important, I think. I also want to acknowledge traditional owners, the Larrakia people, elders past, present and emerging. But also I want to acknowledge all the leaders. Many of you in this community of people who have come to listen today are here because you care, and you yourselves have built Darwin, the modern Darwin that is today. So thank you for that. This election, there's a really clear choice. A choice between consistent, sustainable and substantial investment in Darwin and Palmerston and the Northern Territory from federal Labor, as articulated over the last weeks, months and years through consultation, or more of the same neglect under the coalition that we've seen for 6 years. Now, some of my opponents, not looking at anyone in particular, have tried to paint this election as not a federal election, not who will stand up for the Territory down in Canberra, but as somehow about the Northern Territory Government or Michael Gunner. They are doing that to distract everyone from the fact that the coalition government has consistently failed the people of the Northern Territory over the last 6 years. And that is a disgrace, that is a shame. It's sad that that has been the case, but it has been the case. So the case for change. I've been fighting in Canberra. I've given 227 speeches down there to promote the Territory and to hold to account this coalition government for the paltry investments that they've made. So standing up for us down there and working with the Darwin Major Business Group to run 2 facing norths down in Canberra to make sure that we get the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition to say what their vision is for the Northern Territory. But unfortunately, from whether it be Abbott or Turnbull, now Morrison, we've seen very little. And even just the other day, we had the Prime Minister come to town and not announce anything. We've seen a reduction in troops. We've seen a reduction in the defence infrastructure spend, and defence is so important. Too little too late to come to town 3 weeks before an election and say, oh, we're going to bring forward some of the defence infrastructure spend when businesses are closing, when people haven't got work, when the population's dropping. We need federal investment, and that's what federal Labor's been announcing, not only in defence, not only the 300 million shiplift that hasn't been met by the current coalition government, but in health, in education, in tourism, $220 million for Kakadu from the first budget, not Mr Morrison's over 10 years. We need that investment now. In education, $41 million extra will go to Territory schools. $14 million will go to a learning hub, a new learning hub out in Palmerston. And we'll give parents a hand with childcare costs, because that is really a significant cost of living expense for our families up here. And we know that when families can't afford to live here, they leave, and we can't afford any more businesses to close. We need investment. Just have a look at health. $69 million into our hospitals, extra. And more support for people fighting cancer. That's our priorities from federal Labor. More money into health, but also more assistance for small businesses. The Australian Investment Guarantee, that $20,000 write-off, and the same tax rates for companies under $50 million as the current government. I'm really proud to again stand for Labor in this federal election. Very proud. And I'll keep fighting for us in Canberra.
Luke Gosling, thank you. Now, of course, ladies and gents, after we hear from all of the candidates, you will get the opportunity to ask those questions in just a little while. But our next candidate is the CLP member, Mrs. Cathy Ganley. Now, Cathy is a third-generation Territorian who was born and raised in Tennant Creek as one of 6 children. Page. After completing her studies, Cathy pursued a career in law, and she's got extensive experience as a senior executive in government and has worked in the private sector and with not-for-profit organisations. Cathy's held many board and statutory roles, including time as the Judicial Register of the local court and as the Deputy Coroner for 6 years. Cathy's married with 2 children and lives in Fanny Bay. She's a strong supporter of local business and industry and is determined that escalating crime rates must be addressed as a priority. She embraces the cultural diversity of Solomon and believes in equal opportunity base. Cathy?
Thank you, Katie. Firstly, thank you everyone for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you very much for the CAV for hosting it, Chamber of Commerce and Rotary. What I firstly want to say is that I know what it's like to be a Territorian, and even if I say so myself, I'm tough and I'm resilient, and I've backed myself throughout my life, the whole of my life, and I want to share something with you. Despite that my parents passed away when I was 14 at boarding school, 10 months apart, I backed myself and I pursued a career in law, and I put myself through a career in law. I had many times where I was at University House by myself because I couldn't afford to do anything. But that's what you do when you're a Territorian, you back yourself, and I backed myself. And as Katie rightfully said, I was very successful in being offered and blessed to be offered the opportunity of being the Deputy Coroner for 6 years. I loved that role. I didn't get what I gave, I believe, to a lot of Territorians. I gave sensitively worded findings to them, explaining how their loved ones passed away. That's what I'm about. I'm about Territorians and backing Territorians. What I mostly want to say to you is that our city's namesake, Charles Darwin, put it best when he said, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, it's the most adaptable. And we Territorians are adaptable, and that's what happens with us. We back ourselves through through adversity, and we persevere. We Territorians have persevered through adversity, backed ourselves to take chances, and had the vision to make the Territory what it is today, great. What really concerns me the most, though, is that we have persevered through the bombing of Darwin and Cyclone Tracy, and we have achieved the biggest milestone of all, self-government. But what most concerns me is 40 years later, we are in debt to our eyeballs, and we are still 75% reliant on federal government funding. And what are we doing? Squabbling over GST. It is embarrassing. We have so much more opportunity in the Territory than squabbling over GST payments. The other thing I want to say to you is we are so much more than a welfare territory. We have to be more than a welfare territory. We owe it to each other to be more than that, and we owe it to our children to leave them with more than that. It's because, you know what? Labor is Labor, whether you're federal, territory or local, which is the case here. We cannot afford Labor. Labor is mismanagement of budgets, Labor is mismanagement of our money, and Labor is debt and taxes. I agree with John Langerland. We need to address seriously our financial crisis. We are in a financial crisis. We have no money, and we are paying significant amounts of money to service our debt. That is embarrassing. We need more. What I offer to you is a choice. At the federal election on the 18th of May, you can choose what's his name and go Labor with debt and taxes, or you can choose a federal coalition government that knows how to manage a budget, knows how to spend within its means, offers lower incentives to businesses, and backs Territorians like I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I reckon there's going to be a bit of passion here today. I like it, and I think it is going to be good to hear from our candidates once you have the opportunity as well to ask some more of those questions. And we've got two more wonderful candidates here today, and just a reminder as well, we are actually, I believe, going Facebook Live. They are streaming, or certainly this is being streamed today, is my understanding. So you will be able to watch what's happening on Facebook. Now, our third candidate today is Mr. Tim Parish of the Greens. Now, Tim is a Darwin-based artist and filmmaker. He was born and raised in Darwin, studying at Parish Primary, Darwin High School and Charles Darwin University before completing his studies at RMIT in Melbourne. Alongside working as an independent filmmaker and running his own production company, Timothy founded the Transitions Film Festival, an international film festival dedicated to showcasing the solutions to social and environmental issues. Now, Tim's passionate about protecting the Northern Territory's environment for future generations and understands that the global climate change is an emergency that cannot be ignored. He says we must protect our land, water and communities in the long term, and to do this we need to transition to a resilient and sustainable economy. He says we can do this through embracing renewable energy, fostering innovation and transforming our population centres and regional towns into eco-cities powered by solar and other renewable energies. He says we can transition, or position, I should say, the Northern Territory as a leader in renewable energy, economy, and really show the world the meaning of the boundless possible, that would create a better future for us all. Tim?
Thank you, Katie. Thanks for having me, Rotary Darwin, and I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, Larrakia, that we're all privileged to be on. It's fantastic and a privilege for me to be able to stand for this seat. As she just introduced, I'm really passionate about us protecting the Territory and the environment and thinking about what our future is. The reason I'm standing for the Greens is because I believe in this party has a vision for this country that hasn't changed over the last 3 decades. This is a moral centre of our country, the environmental and social justice movement, which the Greens have always represented, is actually, I think, something that only the other parties are coming to now when they actually believe in climate change or feel like there is some time to act. But that is the reason why I'm standing. I'm not actually interested in, I wasn't interested in being a career politician, but I do believe that our politics is broken in this country. I believe that the major parties are taking us down in the wrong direction, and the federal government over the last 6 years has disgusted me in so many ways that I couldn't stay sitting. The way that our federal, our government is in the pocket of big business, pushing coal and major fossil fuels in the face of climate change is despicable to me, because we actually have to move very quickly towards a zero carbon economy. And, no offence, Raj, but that the people, the Liberals have shown how deep they are in the pocket of big business by preferencing a coal baron rather than any of the other progressive parties on this platform, And I think that we need to, in the Territory, we have the opportunity, instead of spending and investing, which what Labor has proposed is a $1.5 billion infrastructure fund to kickstart the fracking and unconventional gas industry. We believe that we should be spending that money on developing industries, not propping up existing multi-billion-dollar multinational corporations that should already be able to pay for this, that are going to create huge emissions, double the emissions of the Northern Territory, and where we could spend $1.5 billion actually investing in the renewable energy revolution that is going to set us up for the next century. We know that we have the best solar resources in the entire world here. This Australia and the Northern Territory is the gateway to Asia, and we could be exporting our solar energy up to Indonesia and throughout Southeast Asia, and helping those countries to be able to transition off fossil fuels. I think that these are the most important issues of our day. And so is our need to respect human rights. The way that offshore detention has been working in this country for the last 6 years, to me, is absolutely disgusting, and it's a human rights abuse, and we shouldn't be standing for it. What is going on in Manus Island and Nauru it is so wrong. And it is not just able to justify it by saying that we're just trying to stop the boats. We should be setting up offshore detention centres, processing centres in Indonesia, where the people come from, so they don't have to come on boats in the first place. That would make so much more sense than wasting $9 billion of Australians' taxpayers' money, keeping only 1,500 people in jail for 5 or 6 years. This makes no sense to me. So I believe that the Northern Territory and Darwin, I agree with Kathy. We named our city after Charles Darwin. And the lesson that I learned from Charles Darwin is the importance of embracing evolution. We have a change, and change is coming, and there is a renewable energy revolution. There is so many innovation technologies that we could be embracing, and that, for me, is the boundless possible of the Northern Territory, rather than getting into boundless pollution for the next 50 years. Thank you very much.
Tim, thank you. Our next candidate today is Raj Samson. Now, originally from India, Raj was inspired to become a doctor when his father suffered cardiac illness. He's worked extensively in the health industry and in small business. Raj has got a keen interest in politics, having campaigned in council elections in Darwin and Palmerston. Please welcome Raj for the United Australia Party.
Thank you. Thank you, Territorians, Labour members, Liberal members, Green members, United Australia Party members and future United Australia Party members. I thank you very much. You are the people. Look, I tell you one thing, how I came to Australia, came to Northern Territory. I came here just for an English test. I intended to be here for 3 or 4 hours, and now it's 12 years that I'm here already. I already ran for 2 elections. So I'm Territorian by choice. So you are what I liked in you guys, you are the friendliest people I have ever met in life. You are the people of biggest heart. You are the most accommodating people, and you are the people who accept the other cultures very readily. You are the people who look after the person on the basis, not on the basis of their color, ethnicity, culture, and religion, but on the basis of their qualities. That's what I saw in Territorians. You are the people who understand other people's language difficulties. You understand we have got 30% Indigenous people in Northern Territory and around 30% immigrants. In a nutshell, I'll say you are the greatest people I ever met in life. Thank you very much for that. I would also say thanks to Mr. Peter Hampton and Katie Woolf of 104.9. Now, I don't need to introduce myself that I'm running for Solomon against Labour, Liberal, and Green. One thing I say, you got this democratic power of vote, after a long fight of various peoples, starting from 600 years BC, where Aristotle, Pluto, Crato, and so many people, they fought for this. Ultimately, you got this democratic right to vote. Before that, you had no vote. There was feudalism. You had no choice to decide who is going to rule over you. Then there was monarchy. You had no choice to decide who will rule on you. Then come imperialism. Then various other isms. I'm not a sociologist, I really don't know much about it. But various systems came where you were being ruled by the people, you have no choice on them. Now you have a choice. Now you can decide who is going to rule over you. Who is going to not rule over you means who is going to manage for you, who is going to serve you. This is not for ruling, this is for serving. We are here to serve you, we are not here to rule on you. That is the difference. That is the difference in my ideology and the ideology of my friends. Now you have got not much choices. You have got Labour, you have got Liberal, you have got Green. Everybody is offering you heaven. They are going to give you heaven on 19th. Definitely. They will come to your home, they will offer you heaven. Labour will give you heaven, Liberal will give you heaven. Green has already offered you. While Green is thinking in backward, they are thinking in Stone Age. They are showing you heaven in the future. They are not the people of future, they are the people of the past. Don't ever think of them. You have got Labour, you have got Liberal then. Labour and Liberal, what have they done for you? They have never created money. Labour is for taxes, Liberal is to reduce your services. They want to sell all your assets. And that's how they want to create money. There are no one here who want to create money except United Australia Party who wants to create money, who don't want to sell our ore outside. We want to process our ore here. We want to generate employment here. Not like them. For 100 years they have been running this country. They have been ruining this country. We don't want them. So please vote and support United Australia Party and make Australia great. Do you want Australia great or not? Yes or no? Do you want Australia great or not?
Raj, that is time. Thank you very much. And wonderful to hear from all of our candidates today. Now, look, I get 3 hours every morning to ask politicians questions, so I think we need to throw it to the audience straight away. Has anyone got a question? I can see plenty of questions actually out there, and we are going to get into it. I saw a lady in a purple dress towards the back actually ask a question first, so we might we'll get the microphone heading down that way. And ladies and gents, get those questions ready, because there's going to be lots of opportunities to put them out. We'll just make sure we've got the microphone on. Now, when you do have a question, if you can let us know exactly who it's directed for as well, which candidate.
Thank you, and thank you all for this morning, or this afternoon. My name's Susan Burns. I'm from the Disability Peak Body organisation here in the Territory. I suppose it's a question for all the candidates, a very brief response. But the Northern Territory makes a $99 million co-contribution every year towards the NDIS. In the last quarter, there was a $90 million underspend that went back into the federal budget. If elected, what will you do to promote the Territory and to promote that those funds are coming back into the Northern Territory?
Now, did you want everybody to answer that question, or did you have it for a specific party?
Ideally, if it was possible, if elected. So a 30-second response would be fantastic.
So, 30 seconds. Raj, do you want to kick it off? Or do you want to pass it down to Kathy?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question, so I will understand from the other person's answer.
Sure.
The question was about the NDIS and funding of it. There's been a massive underspend by the current federal government, which they've used to come up with their gammon budget surplus. So the budget surplus that isn't actually here, it's projected into the future. It's based partially on a massive underspend of services to people with a disability. And here in the Territory, it's difficult to get the services that we need to the people that need them. And I think what we're committed to do, having created the National Disability Insurance Scheme, Bill Shorten having had a massive role in bringing that to bear, is we are going to ensure that funding for the NDIS is kept for the NDIS, and we're going to put some more work, and I've been talking to Linda Burney when she was here last week, about more focus on getting services to Territorians than is currently the case. It's a disgrace that there's been this massive underspend.
So you would commit, obviously, to making sure that it does stay in the Territory? Yep.
See, regarding funding which can help disability people in Northern Territory, is that was your question? Okay, look, the policy which we have, none of these people have. Our policy is give 20% rebate to regional areas. Northern Territory is one of the regional areas, and when the economy grows, money stays here, and more money for the Territorians, ultimately that will directly or indirectly will help disability people and other people. Other thing is for pensioners. And whether it is disability pension, old age pension, or whatever type of pension, we have got a policy that we will be paying $150 extra per week. Labor Liberal won't pay you anything. They are not earning. They are not making any money. We will be the people who will be making money. United Australia Party will make money. They have the money to give territory. They have been offering you for last 100 years. They will give you this, they will give you, what did they give you? Debt.
Thank you, Raj. Tim?
Yeah, thank you. Look, put simply, the Greens have a policy to fully fund the NDIS as well. We think it's an important policy, and that there are many people, especially in remote territory, who deserve to have the quality care that the rest of Australia has. And, from a funding perspective, we believe that these kind of social services should be fully funded, not as part of a budget cut, but actually through properly taxing the mining corporations and other multinational corporations in Australia that are not paying corporate tax, and that we need to really beef up our petroleum resource rent tax so that we actually aren't just giving away our resources like oil and gas, and we could be bringing in tens of billions of more dollars into this country. And that's these are the reasons why Australia is not fully funding its social services.
Kathy?
Thank you. My understanding is that the NDIS is not fit for purpose for Territorians. One size doesn't fit all. Unfortunately, unlike everywhere else, Territorians, we have 250,000 people spread across 1.4 million hectares, 5 communities, 73 remote townships and outstations. There are no services in these places. We have to create services for these places. What the federal coalition government is doing is backing disability care. Harry's Place is a classic example. If you haven't visited it, please do so. We've invested funding into that and we've exceeded that funding, so there's respite care for Indigenous Territorians and disabled Territorians and their carers to receive respite, much needed respite from their loved ones. The federal coalition backs Territorians.
Thank you, Kathy. Now, if you do just want to pop your hand up if you have got a question out there in the audience. I know that I believe we've got that microphone floating around. Yep, got one back there. If you can just let us know exactly who it's directed to as well, that would be wonderful.
My question is directed at Luke Gosling. Government only gets its money from the taxpayer via taxes. Where is Mr Shorten going to get his money from to pay for all of this?
Tim, if we're just able to get that mic. So that one there for Luke Gosling, and you heard that question, Luke?
The same place that the current coalition federal government gets their funding from. We need to invest in our industries. The more productive our economy is, the more revenue will flow into government coffers to meet the priorities that we have. So we've been very clear, more than any other opposition has ever. We have well in advance of this election put our policies forward so that people could see what we're about. There's no hidden tricks, budgeting accountancy tricks in the budget that I'm sure when we come to government we'll find where the coalition have cut more than we realise at the moment. But the reality is that governments provide services. We will do that as efficiently as possible. We do have some different priorities to the current government, but we will fund what we have promised.
Those final costings haven't been released yet though, have they?
Yep, both sides' final costings haven't been released yet, but will be at the end of this week.
End of this week. All right, next questions. That one was only for Luke Gosling, so we will go back out to the audience now for another question. Yep, just over this way.
Yeah, this is for Kathy Ganley. Under the CDP, workers who work for a company under the CDP aren't considered a worker, so they're not covered currently under the Workhouse Safety Act. All right, so these people continue to work for a company and they're not covered under that act, the same as any other worker. I believe Labor's intent is to abolish the CDP and change it to CDEP. And doing that, they become an employee to an employer, which gets them the right to be covered under the Workhouse Safety Act. Now, federally, we're talking about, not continually local issues, but locally, we have a lot of people on the CDP program under a federal coalition. Kathy, what are your intentions to ensure that workers who are vulnerable already become recognised as employers under the CDP that you currently support?
Thank you. My understanding is that it is the Labor government that introduced the Fair Work Commission, and my understanding is that it's that independent body that determines those sorts of conditions as well as under the Act. So So I don't know what your question is. We have our set policies. You have your set policies. What I don't understand what you're asking me.
What I'm asking you is the Fair Work Act is a totally different act in comparison to the Work Health Safety Act. So under the Work Health Safety Act, they're not classed as employers. So correction, employees. So they're not protected under the Act. So these vulnerable people working for companies and aren't protected under the Work Health Safety Act.
So
Not the Fair Work Act. We're not talking about the Fair Work Act. So under CDEP, under Labor, they become an employee and they are protected under the Work Health Safety Act.
So
Do you support that?
are you essentially asking if the coalition would do the same as what the Labor Party's doing?
Basically, yes. So you're going to scrap the CDP and change the title into an employee, not an employee, and not slave labour.
No.
Could I comment then? Look, the Greens also agree with this policy that the CDP is essentially sort of like intentioned labour's work for the dole, especially out in Aboriginal communities, and people aren't given proper jobs. They should be given meaningful work and paid for that work, not $11 an hour, which is below minimum wage. And so we agree with Labor on that, and we think that there should be a whole new range of work available for people who are on work for the dole, who are actually assisting in the regeneration of our land, the installation of, and creating alternative economies that will create sustainable Australia that we all want. I could go. Hope you don't mind this.
Are there I'm sure there's a lot of other people around the audience who do have questions, so we might just head around. And please remember, if you are able to just direct it at the candidate that you do want to answer that question for you. Yes.
Hi there, I'm Sonia Mackay from UN Portland, Australia. There's a great need for seniors aged care here in the Northern Territory. And I would like to find out from each one of you, what are you going to do to assist this major need here in the Northern Territory?
So aged care, yep. Kathy, if you want to kick off for us.
Thank you. That is a valid and essential question. I know that the Federal Coalition does back aged care. We have just funded 24 places for Pearl supported aged care, and we've just funded 26 places, I understand, for the terrace in Palmerston. So the Federal Coalition understands the needs of senior Territorians and aged Territorians, and we are backing them with funding these additional places in the most recent budget. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
And Sonia, yeah, you can come.
I just would like to ask a question. With the ACAR round that was actually released this year, with the ACAR round that was released this year, 99 beds. Okay, I understand that there were some beds that came to the Northern Territory, but 99 beds was taken away from the Northern Territory and given back to the interstate aged care facilities. Why is 99 beds taken away from the Northern Territory?
So Sonia's question there, why were 99 beds taken away from the Northern Territory with aged care?
I don't understand that question. I don't believe that's the case, but I'm happy to consider it, and if you submit it to me, I'll have a look at it for you, but that's not what I've been told. We've funded another 50 beds for Territorians. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got another question out there in the audience. If you do want to let us know exactly who it's directed at as well, I think it could be Owen Pike. Owen?
Thanks, Katie. Hang on, just before we do, because it was asked of us what we're going to do, there's been a reduction in the number of beds, and there's been a pittance of aged care packages given to us. The need is massive. We need to be supporting senior Territorians to stay in their home, and we need to do a lot more there, but we need to provide extra beds as well where there's the need, and we obviously have the need. I've personally gone down to Regis and Pearl when constituents of ours in Darwin and Palmerston have raised concerns about the level of care. Now, those organisations do the best that they can, but you often see that profit is put above people, and what we need to ensure is that there's enough staff to look after our seniors when they are in care, and we need to make sure there's enough packages to support our seniors. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Tim or Raj, did you want to make comment on that one?
All right, look, the answers to these questions are actually not answers. What they are saying, we will fund this problem with another problem. Actually, no one is focusing on how they are going to fund. Funding will come from economy. Unless until you have something to raise the economy, you cannot fund it. So ultimately, all questions, they come to funding, and funding comes to economy. Our economy is so poor, our employment is so poor. How will you employ the workers over there? Your employment rate is 60%. Unemployment rate is 5%. You call it unemployment rate 5%, employment rate 60%. What is this gap meaning for? Employment rate is 60% according to Australian Bureau of Statistics. And unemployment rate is 5%. Where is this rest of 35% is? What is it? What is the meaning of this 30? This is all, there is a problem.
Thanks.
From what I understood, what Raj is saying is maybe he's saying we should put the elderly to work. I'm not sure there. But, essentially, I think where we come from, obviously, we side with Labor on this policy. It's very important for us to fund aged care, and we also think it's important that the elderly are respected and have an important place in our society, and that there are great opportunities in community work and community engagement more so that the elderly are really put as the centre of our culture. That's all I have to say.
Now, I'm pretty sure we had a question there from Owen that we were going to go to. Owen, is it somebody that it's directed at?
At the current member for Labor. When you started your speech, you mentioned that you didn't want this on state-based issues. First of all, I just want to point out that you were voted in on a protest vote to the previous CLP government. I want to ask you now, you don't want state-based issues. It's obvious why, because this government's not doing a good job, which means that you must think that they are doing a good job. I want to know a couple of things. Why is Michael Gunner not front and centre supporting you? And do you think the current government are doing a good job? And if so, why?
So, yeah, that's a classic example of the distraction that I was talking about earlier. So what Owen Pike, who's a well-known government,
I think he's a Territorian, though. He's well and truly entitled to ask a question.
So he's a well-known member of the community. Sorry, Katie, if I'm going to
But he has also paid his money to be here.
So, as people are aware, this is a federal election. What is important in this federal election is that people have got the opportunity to choose. An opportunity to choose for what we're offering, the opportunity to understand what the current government is offering, which isn't much, to be honest, but it is a distraction. Now, is insulting members of different governments. There'll be a territory election next year. To insult Territorians to say that I was voted in because they were protesting against another level of government is insulting them. They voted me in because they listened to what I said and they had a look at who had what to offer, and they'll do that again at this election.
Now, I know there's a lot of questions floating around, and I'm pretty sure Tony Pickering's got one. Oh, we've got somebody. Owen, would you like to hear Kathy's response? I'm sure everybody would like to. We'll pass it down.
I just want to point out to everyone, it wasn't Labor who won the last two territory and federal elections. It was the country Liberals that lost them. You lost confidence in us. Yeah, I'm standing for them because I'm not a misogynist like the former ones. I'm actually standing them because I want to rebrand the Country Liberal Party. The Country Liberal Party helped me when I was 14. I want to help Territorians because we are in a mess. This man has been a nodding head the whole 3 years that the Labor government has been in the Territory. I've seen him nodding behind every decision they've made. Now the Gunner government's hiding, and he's hiding from them. Now the man he's going to go and work for says that the Gunner government is doing a great job. My ass, they're doing a great job. We're in debt, and it's about time we realised it, and we need to get out of it.
We have got a lot of questions out in the audience. I believe we've got one towards the back. I think, sorry, the microphone's already roving around before I see you guys. Keith?
Yeah, g'day, Katie. My question is to Kathy and Luke. If any of the other guys want to put a word in, that's fine. But the thing is, this is, as pointed out, a federal election. And the federal government has been sitting back. I'm asking whether we have this huge problem in the top end of Australia, from Broome, the Territory, Alice to the top end, and of Queensland. And we have this problem every year. Nothing changes. We've got Aboriginal communities that are actually just communities where the government, federal government, just keeps building houses. We've got a hospital that was built at Papunya 30 years ago. It's all gassed up, it's got operating theatres, lights, operating tables, but it's never been commissioned as a hospital. Now, can you imagine the amount of time and congestion in the Alice Springs Hospital? Why can we not have service centres that, instead of building houses, built infrastructure for services, stores? You know, government. We need something to keep people on their land. That is what Aboriginal people want, to be on their land, look after their land. Well, what can we do?
Can I just answer that quickly?
Yes,
we'll pass
absolutely.
It on. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Keith.
Look, the Greens policy is that we need to build strong, resilient and sustainable Indigenous communities and support Aboriginal people to be on their land, to be able to, and through investing, say for example, in renewable energy and transitioning completely over to solar and storage, that will take a huge burden off those communities, creating meaningful work that is not CDP and is actually able to contribute to perhaps having localised agriculture and things like that. That will take the burden off those communities, so they won't be shut down like they were in Western Australia when a government came in and decided that they would play politics with the lives of our First Nations people, and that is very important for us as the Greens Party.
So what's the actual question?
Would you deliver more services and infrastructure in those remote communities rather than just building houses, I believe?
Okay, as I said previously,
And to keep people on land.
I totally support and encourage our First Australians, Indigenous Territorians remaining on their homeland. The issue that we have, which I've pointed out, is that we have a limited bucket of money, and when we're hot to the eyeballs in debt, where do we get that money from? So we actually need to get job-creating projects that sustain our economy, that enable us to actually do the spend in these remote communities. Where do we get the money from? We have to get the money from job-creating projects. Create jobs for Territorians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. We need to build an economy so our future Territorians, whether they're Indigenous or non-Indigenous, they can make this place a home and call it a home and not be hocked to their eyeballs in debt like we currently are.
Yeah. Okay, United Australia Party has got a policy for remote Australia, for regional areas. Like one of them, as I said before, we are giving 20% tax rebate to regional areas. Another thing what we are doing, which will support regional areas, is we are supporting fast train systems. Not from city to city, not from Sydney to Melbourne. Fast train system from Sydney city to the remote areas. from Darwin city to outside area so that people can come to city, work, and go back to their home, and they can maintain their lifestyle. That way, they can afford the housing, cheaper housing. And we have got that housing affordability issue is also addressed in that thing. Plus, other thing for like job creation, by selling assets we can't. By selling assets we can't. By giving foreigners our rights, our land, our administration, that won't solve our problem. Impacts came, $40 billion came. Where is that? There's no effect. Today we are looking for money. So we can have a sophisticated manufacturing product which can be exported outside. You know, USA has got, they pay very well to their laborers. Japan pays very well to their laborers. And France pays their, but they have got their export economy. Because of
Thank
export,
you, Raj.
they are having.
Thank you.
It's about jobs and investment. Labor has said that we will, through the North Australia Development Fund, allocate $1 billion of that fund to tourism infrastructure across Northern Australia. That's a key missing part. We've talked about the CDP program. We're going to change that. We're going to have more real jobs for people in communities, more of an incentive for them to be on their country, and we know people are healthier when they're on their country. But we've also doubled the amount of funding we're going to put into remote housing. And why that's important is because we know that when people are in proper housing, they're healthier and there's less of a cost to them as a community and to the system to provide health services. We're also going to double the number of ranges. So you get what we're seeing, real jobs out on country are going to be important, but it's also going to be great for the Darwin and Palmerston economy, because when we see renewable projects, when we see tourism infrastructure in different areas of the territory, that's great for Darwin because more people are going to come to Darwin.
Now, I believe there was a question, yep, just there. Kathy, that question from Keith, he said that you just said we're broke. Are you working for the Territory government or the federal government?
The Territory government is broke, and the Territory government keeps lying about how much we are in debt. They can't manage a budget, they can't spend within their means, and then they go to the federal government with cap in hand asking for money with no plan. We've already just given Territory government $250 million additional to which that we are obliged to under GST payments, along with everything else that we've invested. The cities deal, roads, Rosie, $500 million spend we've got a projected for roads here in the Territory. We've just announced $20 million for mango farms so that we can increase agribusiness. We've just announced $2 million to actually progress our CSIRO report so that we have off-stream storage for water so that we can actually grow our agribusiness. We support Territorians and we don't spend outside of our means. So I act for Territorians. My intention is to be the Territorians' representative in Canberra and be their voice in Canberra.
Now we've got a lady here who's got the microphone ready to ask a question.
Thanks very much. I'm a bit scratchy at the moment, and I'm concerned that nobody has mentioned the elephant in the room in very open terms. We have enormous amounts of power in the Northern Territory coming from the sun. We have vast distances. What plans do the major parties have for setting up solar farms and setting up stations for recharging electric vehicles? Because we are ideally suited to start in on that sort of system.
Yeah, great question, because what we've got in the Territory is a lot of land, we've got a lot of space and we've got a lot of sun. I've been working with people who are getting the work together, the business case together, the investors together for the world's largest solar farm in the Northern Territory. We are crazy if we do not use these resources, the land and solar power. Not only we can use it for our economies, cheaper power for business, but we can also export it. We can also export power, and I'm working with people who are doing that. We need to have the right policies in place to support renewables. Obviously, the energy mix in Australia is not just from one source. We need to have a diversified source of energy, but solar has got to be massive, particularly for us here in the Northern Territory.
So I believe it was the major parties you were wanting to hear from. Did you also want to... Yep, Kathy?
I'm really sorry to break your dream, but if you think that solar power is going to generate all of our electricity and those vehicles that Billy's talking about, you need to stop taking the drugs you're on. It's not going to happen. So if we're going to have rechargeable cars taking our caravans, we won't be getting out of Darwin. Hey, grey nomads, sell your caravans now. It's not happening.
Can I
Tim, I
rebut
might
that,
let
please?
you, yeah.
Look, unfortunately, this is absolutely indicative of the lack of imagination that the Liberals have when it comes to the potential for renewable energy. And I think that I don't know if you've even looked into the economic modelling that renewables have. There's a boom going on around the world. Apparently, she thinks that this lovely elderly lady here takes drugs because she cares about the environment. That's absolutely insulting. I can't believe you did that. But I think what we need to be oh my God, that is so disrespectful to one of your own constituents. I can't actually believe it. So I think, where I spoke as the Greens at the beginning is that we are very passionate about this, and I support what Luke's just said. I think that they're on the right track. Where the Greens come in is that we say there are two issues here. There's the economic argument, and then there's also the environmental argument. We are not just switching over to solar and renewables because makes economic sense, which it does, but we are doing it because we are facing a climate crisis right now all over the world. We are doing this because we know that we need to decarbonise our economy all over the world and in Australia, and that putting money into fracking and boosting the gas industry is not the way to go.
Thank you, Tim. I believe I've got a question here from this gentleman at the door.
Yes, I'm a proud ex-public servant. When I was... The public service was contributing to superannuation for about 40 years. That funding which was taken out of their pay was not actually put in a fund. That the money disappeared back to the federal government. I'm telling you tonight, they still owe us. Because for many years, and still continuing, the indexation of the pensions which public servants get, who went to great trouble to build this town and this state, and are worthy members of this community, their pensions from superannuation have been indexed at the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. It does not keep rate with normal inflation. It does not keep rate with rates that are increasing throughout the community. So many public servants who serve this area well are not getting what they deserve in their indexation. I'd like to ask and I would also point out that other indexed pensions of this nature for the forces and for the politicians, changed their indexation to reflect better reflect the increasing costs. I'd like the views of the candidates, please, on would they support a correction in these payments so that the public servants who are well into their 60s, 70s and 80s are not held down 20 or 30% below what the indexation ought to be. Thank you.
Who'd like to kick off with that one? Luke? Having an issue there with the microphone?
Yeah, thanks for your questions. And obviously, when it comes to super, Labor created super to make sure that people had the means that they needed later in life as a way of ensuring that they could support themselves. And I think it's been incredibly successful over the decades. This issue is raised with me often when I advocate with my colleagues around public servants, including veterans, and the indexation that goes there. I'm not an expert on superannuation, but what I will say is that politicians should be in the same basket as everyone else. And what we've found with super is it's been a very, very good way for us as a nation to not only support people who have provided that service, built Darwin, built Australia, our country, serving the public, but it's also industry super funds in particular have been fantastic vehicles for building Australia.
If you would like to make comment, Raj? Or, yep, Tim?
The Greens are with Labor on this. We absolutely support the importance of giving people a living wage, whether they be unemployed people, whether they be pensioners, and whether they be people who have worked their whole life. It's important that we live in a first world country and people deserve to have dignity in their retirement. And I think it's very important that one of the issues which Luke just raised made me think of how politicians, federal politicians, have six-figure pensions in this country. We spend $350 million every year paying for politicians who have retired 10 and 20 years before, and yet they won't do that to the public servants who work for the country. And we and the Greens think that we should abolish that.
I'd be curious to ask the Greens candidate as to what he thinks about the proposed Labor changes to superannuation and self-funded retirees and what's going to happen with all their superannuation.
I don't have anything to say about that.
Well, Kathy, we might get your response to our constituents' question a little earlier. Over at the door, who wanted to know about super?
People who have much less than I do are struggling on their depreciated pensions. The indexation is not adequate. It's been changed for all other areas other than the Commonwealth superannuants.
I don't really have any comment to say about the indexation and the cut of it, but what I would say to you is that we're going to be worse off as seniors if Labor gets in, because they're going to be taxing it a lot more than we have.
Now, we have got one more question. We've got a lady who's been waiting very patiently. I know that everybody's got so many questions today. Unfortunately, we are getting ready to wrap up, but yep, got a question here.
Hi. I know that the lady before said that the elephant in the room was a question that hadn't been asked, and maybe it was kind of slightly touched upon, but I don't think it's been adequately answered for me. I'm really concerned about the predictions, the actual effect that we're seeing in Darwin and the rest of the NT. It's getting hotter. It used to be 6 days a year, over 35 in Darwin, back in the old days. I'd like to see people trying to make Darwin, the NT, great again. It used to be great. And now we're finding it's getting hotter and hotter, and they're trying to make silly structures that make it shady because it's not hot, it's too hot here. And it's going to get hotter. The predictions are very clear. It's going to be like 9 months a year before this century's out, over 35 degrees, possibly 40 degrees. Those beloved gas plants that Labor and Liberal have been giving us here in Darwin, they don't work when it's hot. That's when they have the shutdowns down south. They don't work in heat waves. It's getting hotter here, and I haven't seen any effort to stop this from happening. There'll be no jobs. There'll be no sustainable communities. There'll be none of this caring for the old people. What we want is actual effort for climate change. And it's not about renewable energy, just renewable energy. It's about stopping the fossil fuels. So I've seen the Liberal government, the Labor government, and some of the smaller parties saying, let's frack this place, lots and lots of exports. Well, I say, go find your planet B. We want this one, and what are you going to do to protect this planet? What are you going to do to stop fracking?
So is that the main question? What will you do about fracking or
Yep.
the climate change more
Yep.
so?
Yep.
Or both?
Both,
Yep.
and also, obviously, protecting the valuable groundwater that we have in the Northern Territory. It's completely vital, precious resource, and there's no alternative for it. And I suggest that you go find your planet B if you're going to ruin our water.
All right, I reckon everybody should have the opportunity to answer questions on that one. Raj, do you want to start?
Yeah. Okay. Look, this planet Earth undergoes various changes. And change is the rule. Change is the rule of existence. If you see the Gulf area, sometimes there used to be water, sometimes there used to be sea. Now there is desert. But that water, the percentage of water of this planet doesn't change. That water moves from one area of the earth to the other area. Yeah, I'm coming to that. So, if Darwin is getting hotter, it doesn't mean this earth is coming to extinction. This is a phobia being generated by Greens for political reasons. If they were true, this my friend Tim Parish, he has driven a car, and many of Green candidates, they come by diesel car. I asked them, why are you using the diesel car? What happened to that? How much carbon is this emitting? How much carbon when the steel was produced, this was emitting. So we cannot, I don't expect him to stop using car and start walking. We can have an electrical car, we can start producing electrical car. The day we have electric car, we can stop diesel car. We cannot stop the industry, we cannot stop the world, we cannot stop, wherever you are sitting, this all is come from the fossil fuel. All the structures have come from fossil fuel. We cannot stop it, we can't organize this function out on the road. So, till we generate our renewable energy-based resources or structure, till we have to use this structure, existing structure.
Thank you, Raj. All right, Tim?
Look, this is what you get when you have a party that's funded by a coal mining tycoon, okay? Like, Raj, I have no disrespect for you, but I don't think you have any interest in learning about the issue of climate science and the reality of what is taking place around the world. And it's embarrassing that the Liberals have decided to preference this kind of politics and one nation above the sensible models that both the Greens and Labor have when it comes to actually averting the climate crisis. I would like to know if Kathy cares or even believes in climate change. But let's find out that in a second. Our opinion is that absolutely we need to work on this. There is a climate emergency around the world. The United Nations just released a report that 1 million species are at risk of extinction around the world due to human development. That's part of the issue of climate change. But this is a federal election. This is an opportunity for us to think about big issues, not just local issues like crime and what's going on down the road. These are the issues that our country needs to think about. And this is the opportunity for us to talk about the actual direction that we're heading as a people. And I think that we should be absolutely phasing out coal and fossil fuels in this country. We've seen the writing on the wall for decades. We don't want to put our water at risk. The fracking industry, which even with the regulations, is not enough in our opinion. Because this is what happens all over the world. Hydraulic fracturing always makes promises that they're going to regulate themselves, and then it's too late once the aquifers have been polluted. We don't think that the risk is worth it. The amount of emissions that were going to be created from those wells is equally as much as it's going to double our emissions in this in the territory. It's going to risk our groundwater for our remote communities, people who live in the centre. And we have a fantastic opportunity to transition towards the future of energy, and that will create more jobs, and it will actually benefit Territorians far, far more, and do our part in averting climate change. Thank you.
Kathy?
I think Tim raises a very, very valid point in the sense that it's not Australia that's only contributing to the issues that we've got with climate change. But the reality is that there's catastrophisation all about fracking or onshore gas exploration. It's been happening for years, and let's really get the facts straight. We had 6 inquiries, and then Labor got into bed with the Greens and put a moratorium on it and to allow a Pepper report to occur. The Pepper report occurred and said that it could be done in an environmentally sustainable way if the recommendations of Dr. Pepper were followed. The Northern Territory government has been assisted by the federal government with progressing this so that we can have job-creating projects and not just fence the Northern Territory in and close it down because we've got no economy going. We're facilitating that. And I just want to point out what we've assisted. So we have assisted with a $9 million, $8.4 million to enable the escalation of an environmental baseline work, a feasibility study and an Aboriginal economic strategy to support development of the Beetaloo. So the issue is that we need to also support Indigenous advancement. We need to remember there are key players here. Our key players are the people that still live in our remote communities in poverty. They live in poverty. We need to be assisting Indigenous Territorians and not filling their heads with catastrophisation.
And Luke?
As well as committed, sustained, substantial investment in the Northern Territory economy, what you'll find with federal Labor is that we will continue to create policy based on evidence, based on the science. Now, we know, as the questioner said, that it's getting hotter. We know that we're going to need to improvise and adapt. One of the things I've been proud of doing in the last 2.5 years as a federal member for Solomon is running 5 Ideas Fests to start working with young entrepreneurs, old entrepreneurs, business, to find the solutions for our community. Now, with the onshore gas industry, the Northern Territory government went through a plan, a report that had a number of recommendations. What I want to ensure is that the Northern Territory, and Darwin and Palmerston in particular, because I'm running again for the seat of Solomon, gets the most possible advantage, gets the best economic value out of all of our industries, including this one. It's vital for our future. We're seeing a decrease in population post the IMPEX construction. We need to see investment that will see our economy grow, so people have got jobs. But it's not just going to be jobs onshore, offshore. It's going to be, as I said, tourism, agriculture, defence. We absolutely have to do whatever we do in our territory in a safe way for the environment, but we also need to be responsible. We need to make sure our economy is strong and grows, and that's what I'm committed to.
Thank you, Luke. Now, ladies and gentlemen, passionate Territorians, I would have to say, unfortunately, we've got no more time for questions. We are going to go to our auction. But, gee, I want to say what an excellent bunch of people you are, and it's so wonderful to see so much passion in the room, and it makes you realise just how lucky we are to live in the Northern Territory and how many great people we've got here and how much we all care about our representation in Canberra, and that gives me that faith, I've got to say. Now, Tony Pickering, can we invite you to the stage for our auction, please? And we will keep our candidates here for a moment, I think. They might be able to tell us a little bit. I know that we've got a few different charities. Rotary is the recipient of one of our auctions or 2 of our auction items, and I believe Dawn House may be one of the others. All right, Tony, do you have the details of all those? Excellent. We might bring Tony over and then we will wrap things up with our candidates. All right, we'll come down there. Don't all
Hey.
run away. Well, okay, maybe we need to finish up with the candidates first if everybody's running away.
Thanks, everyone, for coming along.
Thank you very much. We might give, in order of the candidates, Luke Gosling, round of applause. Thank you, Luke Gosling. Raj Samson, a round of applause. Thank you, Raj. Tim Parish, thanks so much for being here today. And Kathy Ganley, thank you.